All right, let's start with the basics. Let's start with how to log into your meeting room, how to join your meeting room. Now, when you first come to a meeting room, you'll probably see a screen like this, where there's a welcome message on the left, and you can customize this message. And then over here on the right-hand side, it says type your name and click continue. But if I click continue on this form, that means I'm joining as a guest. So what I want to do and what you want to do is look down below where it says, if you are a host or have a saved profile, log in. So if you have co-hosts, if you have admins who are helping to maintain the settings in the room and recordings, if you're the owner and you want to log in, you want to click on this little login link. So we might make this a little bit more prominent. We will see. But for right now, you just click on this little login link and you go ahead and log in. Now, if you forgot your password, of course, click Forgot Password. If you ever want to change your password, you can also just come here and click Forgot Password. And then we'll send you a little link to change your password, and then you can proceed. So I'll go ahead and join. If I click on my menu again, those are all the things that everyone can do. Now, hosts can do a little bit more, okay? A host can also access webinar settings because they're helping to run the meeting, okay? Now, the webinar settings are settings that give you control over the meeting. These are really important. Everyone's going to have different preferences for these, and you want the right combination for you. You might want to change these for different meetings, of course. Now, the first one is kind of the big one, whether or not you want to hide muted attendees. We call that webinar mode, okay? Let's imagine you have 100 people in your room, okay? 100 people, that's a lot of people. Now, you could let people look around the gallery and see everyone, which means that they're being distracted by that cute girl on page 3 or the cute guy on page 5, but maybe you don't want that kind of distraction. So maybe you want to hide muted attendees. Now, if you hide muted attendees, who's not hidden? The unmuted attendees, okay? The people who are part of the active conversation, typically your hosts and co-hosts, okay? And maybe if someone raises their hand, we'll talk about that. If someone raises their hand, you can unmute them, and then they come up on stage. Just by unmuting them, they come up on stage if this option is enabled, okay? So enabling this option is how you run larger meetings. Now, next option is whether or not attendees join muted, okay? Now, this is especially important if you're trying to hide muted attendees. Because look, if you're hiding muted attendees because you want these 5 people to be up on the panel, then you don't want people to join and suddenly be on the panel without expecting it. So the main reason to enable this second feature, attendees join muted, is so that people don't accidentally interrupt the conversation already in progress. Next one, make active speaker view the default view. This is another way of encouraging people to focus on the speaker, not on the gallery. Next, we have a feature called widgets. We'll talk about that later on. Widgets are extra little features that do cool things. And you can choose whether or not each widget can be used by a guest or not. But this option hides the widgets from the guests, okay, so that they can't even see them. And so they cannot be distracted. You notice we're talking a lot about distractions here because we know how meetings go. And we want to give you, as the room owner or host of a meeting, we want to give you as much control as possible so that you can either allow these features or remove distractions from your attendees. Okay, next we have hide chat from guests. Okay, same idea. Some meetings you want to have chat. It's part of your community. It's a way of you as a host getting feedback during the meeting. Maybe you want to save it after the meeting and look it over. So maybe you want chat to be visible. Maybe you want it to be invisible. Now notice it says hide chat for guests. Okay, that means hosts, admins, and owners will still have access to chat. So that way, if you prefer, you can have a host-only chat or host and above only chat. Next, meetings require a host plus present. This is just one extra little option for kind of a privacy thing. So you could decide to enable this feature so that if people join early, they see a little pop-up that says the meeting will start when the host arrives. If you're doing a large event, the larger the event, the more likely you want this. Next option is guests have extra powers. Now what does that mean? Well, let's mouse over this question mark. The question mark tells us that this allows guests to mute or unmute other people, remove people from the meeting, and start or stop recordings. That's a lot of extra power. The ability to kick people from the meeting? Wow, that's pretty powerful. Mute or unmute people, start or stop recordings. This basically makes a guest as powerful as a host. Why would you want that? Well, you would only want that in a small group setting where everyone knows each other and you're all part of a team and there's just no problems. Next, guests can unmute themselves. Okay, the smaller the meeting, the more likely this is enabled. Guests can unmute themselves. The larger the meeting, the more likely this is disabled. Large event mode. Now read this very carefully. This means guests cannot be seen or heard. So choose wisely. If you're doing like 100 people or less, you can leave this off. If you're doing 100 people or more, you probably want this on. Here's what you don't want to do. What you don't want to do is turn on this feature and forget that you turned it on. Because then the next time you launch a meeting and your guest arrives early, your guest is going to be watching a stream of the meeting and not be able to be interactive. Okay, that's no good. So this is an important feature to have for large events, but it's also an important feature to turn off when it's not appropriate. Now, next item, guests can share their screens. Normally this is enabled, but in a large meeting, okay, like a public event, you probably don't want this enabled. You want to choose ahead of time who your co-hosts are and give them that permission. You make them a host, and then they can share their screens. But then the guests cannot interrupt the meeting by sharing their screens. And finally, the enable the raise hand feature. Very simple feature. If it's enabled, I'll enable it right here, then you'll see a little raise hand icon up here. Now, if I go back to webinar settings, okay, if I disable the raise hand feature, then I'm not going to see a raise hand icon right here.
इसमें सेट उस वाले में देखने को
And let's go back to the main menu. Audio video settings shows you basically the same options as before. One thing we didn't cover is virtual backgrounds. We won't get a preview here because I don't have my camera on, but we have a bunch of different categories for background images. We have like 500 images here. And then on the bottom here are uploaded images. So you can upload your own images, right? That's how you do that. And actually, my favorite effect is blur. I think that's more professional. When you pick a virtual background, unavoidably, you're going to have a little kind of fuzzy line around you. Depending on your lighting, if you're well lit and the background is a little bit dark, you're going to have a better time getting a nice, sharp virtual background. But personally, I think virtual backgrounds look fake. And what sells? What builds relationships? Not being fake, being authentic. So I'm going to recommend not using the virtual background feature. We have it because people want it. But I'm going to recommend for your own good, don't use it. Okay, don't be fake. Blurring your background is not being fake. It's just being professional. And even more professional is having a nice, bookshelf or plant or picture or whatever behind you. So I would recommend taking the time to set up something behind you. And a little hint is the more distance between you and the wall behind you, the more professional you look. So that's how you use the virtual background feature.
On side में ये तो मेरे बीच में ऐसे संगीत के ये दिन पढ़ाई करता है नहीं रहा उसको स्लाइड में चले गए करना स्टार्ट मेरे वाले तल्ले बजे से जल्दी हां तल्ले तल्ले साथ में अब यहाँ से उसी देखते हैं उसी को इसी जॉब को रिसर्च विंडो को वो करके देखता हूँ उसको रिवाइज करना एक महीने आपको इसी में तो मैं बोलता है इवन पे और यहाँ तक बंद करना साइड वाले ऐसे नोट में ठीक आ रहा है इसमें लेके आना छोटी वाली वीडियो में फुल कर दो ये नहीं वो कर दिया अच्छा
छोटा लग रहा है ना।
अगर इसको खाली करने तो ठीक आ रहा है, ये नीचे आएगा।
ये साइड किया था इसका,
चलो मैं बताता बना दिया
तो मैं खुद किया था इसको।
स्मॉल एप्लीकेशन जैसी के ये स्मॉल एप्लीकेशन कंट्रोल भी करो। नहीं आएगी वीडियो मिलेगी आपको ऐड करवाने ठीक है बहुत ज्यादा ये सब क्या है ये तो स्क्रीन पे कोडिंग होता है मिनिमम कितना जा रहा है ग्रेड का हमने देखा मिनिमम 15 अभी तक देख लिया है चैनल ये प्लान तो पेगा साइज भी बता रहा हूं सिर्फ साइज पर अगर मैंने इसको देख अभी क्या है ये 16 से लेफ्ट ले तो फिर स्क्रीन पे बहुत जैसे बड़ी स्क्रीन सारा चेक बता स्क्रीन में रहेगा तो उसके वोटिंग और दिखाई दे रहा है तो वो हट गया होगा ना वो हो सकता है सेट हो गया कुछ तो नहीं जब आपने पे उधर गया ये कितने चलता है चाइनीज टाइप है ना हमारा ये साइड से स्पेस है वीडियो वीडियो में नहीं आएगा नेक्स्ट में आएगा नेक्स्ट वाले में देखा कम 10 पाँच लेफ्ट से 5 राइट से हो गया ना चल रहा है तुम्हारा से यूनिक ऐप में ज्वाइन करने इसमें टच करते हैं